Welcome to Build Out Brief. This is Jim Kunkel, and I so appreciate your support of the Build Out live stream that broadcasts each Wednesday at noon Eastern Daylight Time. The live stream that you're watching right now will be starting in just 1 minute. Let me take this opportunity to talk about Build Out Brief. This content series is a result of viewers like you who overwhelmingly requested that I add a supplemental series to Build Out that centers on professional business topics, is more focused, and global on guests. If you're thinking about starting a live stream, then StreamYard is a platform for you. It's what I use to build you Build Out Brief. After the stream, see the comment or the description section for my special savings referral link. Now, when it comes to having a professional live stream and winning over viewers, you need to make sure that your graphics and supporting promotional items are the best. All of the creative content for Build Out and Build Out Brief are designed and produced with Canva. You should check out Canva. See the comment or description section for my special Canva referral link. Good evening and welcome to Build Out Brief. This is a 3-part series on sales teams. My guest for this series is Kristine Sizemore, whose Sandler Training Center, located in Birmingham, Alabama, combines Sandler sales system principles with her extensive sales and management experience to help business leaders achieve success and peace of mind. The 3-part series with Kristine focuses first on hiring sales staff, then it moves on to onboarding sales staff, and finally, the important fundamentals of managing salespeople. I hope that you enjoy this 3-part series, and if you do, please consider giving it a like and also share the 3 parts with your connections and your colleagues who would find these broadcasts interesting. I'm Jim Kunkel. Welcome to Build Out Brief. Joining me tonight is Kristine Sizemore. Kristine, welcome.
Thanks, Jim, for having me.
It's great to have you. This is our final segment. It's going to be talking about managing salespeople. Our first segment focused on the hiring process when it came to the sales team. The second segment that we talked about was the onboarding of the sales team. And I encourage people, if you hadn't seen those broadcasts, to go back in the replay. Just go back in the feed on my LinkedIn page, and you'll be able to take a look at those interviews and our discussion that we had. So let's go ahead and let's talk about managing salespeople. You know, we've gone through the process of recruiting sales team, onboarding a sales team, and now we have to have the management of the sales team. You know, when it comes to sales teams, the roles and specific responsibilities, what are some of the roles and what are some of the considerations that need to be put into the responsibilities?
Well, you know, when you're looking at sales leadership, you know, that sales leadership role covers, you know, supervision, you know, setting the targets that have to be met. That's a part of the role. Sales leaders also have a training component, a mentoring component, and a coaching component. And sometimes, at least this was the case for me when I was promoted to be a manager at 26 years old, you know, long before I was ready, it can be easy to fall back on that supervisor role. And I guess what you would call positional authority. But, you know, Jim, what happens when we go into tell mode? What is the natural reaction from our direct report, even though they do directly report to us? It's pushback. Now, there's times for that supervisory role, but to really develop a successful team, you know, we've also got to look at what are we doing to train them for success, and then how are we coaching them? You know, I talk to business owners and sales managers, and I actually had one tell me, she said, Kristine, sometimes I feel like it's not even worth it to hire and develop a team because it's more work for me. You know, if you've ever been a sales manager and one of your guys brings you in to close a deal and it doesn't close, whose fault is it? Yeah, those fingers get pointed at the manager. So that's where, you know, coaching is really focused on stepping out of that learned helplessness where people are coming to us to fix everything, and us stepping out as managers and as leaders to draw our direct reports out on how they can solve the problem. And asking questions like, what would you do if I wasn't here? Or what do you think is the best next step and why? We teach the 70-30 rule at Sandler, when it comes to working with our prospects. And that means when you look back on a conversation, you want to make sure you keep your prospect talking 70% of the time. But the same thing applies when you're coaching your salespeople, because our people work for their reasons, not ours. And we want to draw them out on those solutions. Now, do we help them? Yes. But we want to uncover what's really going on in the situation and stay out of that tell mode.
I see. And when we're looking at a sales manager, if we're recruiting a sales team, in a way, we need to be recruiting an internal candidate or candidates to move into management positions. What should a company look for in a sales professional on the sales team to identify them as a potential managerial candidate for a sales team?
That's a great question, because I'm sure you've seen it, and I was promoted at 26 to be a manager because I was a good salesperson, without any attention to whether or not I had the inherent traits or skills or abilities to really manage an entire team. And I think almost anyone in sales who is listening right now can say, yeah, I've seen that happen, or I've seen it happen over and over and over. Because the skills and traits needed to be successful as a sales leader are different than the ones to be successful as a salesperson. Because think about it, a sales leader has maybe 6, 7, 8, maybe more people reporting up to them. And in order for them to be successful, hitting their quotas, hitting those targets they've got to meet, they've got to get success out of everyone. Because when you're a sales manager, if you've got one star performer and then everyone else is C players, you're not going to make your number. So you've got to ask yourself as a manager, what are your skills and abilities to train and coach and develop the people on that team? And how can you develop them to be independent producers? Because what you can't do is you can't run around and sell for 6, 7, 8 or more people. So the skills are different. Now, it doesn't mean that a top performing salesperson who wants to move up can't do it, but they need to be aware of what's different. And oftentimes, top performing salespeople who are doing very well financially don't want to take the financial hit to move into management and don't have a desire to develop those skills or use those skills. So sometimes the top salesperson is not the best place to look for promotion into sales management. Look and see who is effective at developing others, who has a desire to do that.
Yeah.
And there's many ways that you can measure those traits as you're looking at, what should your hiring pipeline look like for leadership development in the future? And this may just be my own perspective, but I think it's also very important that if people want to stay in a high producing sales role, that is a well-respected position in the company, and it should be.
I totally agree with you there. Not everybody is a candidate for management. And sometimes there are candidates that you will identify that makes a lot of sense because they have the ability to communicate, to effectively manage a team, lead a team, keep a team within performance metrics and things like that. You and I were introduced to each other. I am a student of Sandler for about 4.5, almost 5 years.
Yes.
You are a provider of Sandler selling system. When it comes to the sales leadership training,
yes,
Sandler does prepare the sales professional, but also when it comes to the sales leadership.
Yes.
What are some of the things in the Sandler program or programs that you offer your clients that will best benefit a company for the sales leadership?
Well, Jim, I can tell you, I started my management program just about a year ago. And when I work with a team and I work with the leadership as well, we see results faster. Because as those leaders are learning Sandler alongside their team, they're also learning to coach in a consistent way. They're also learning how to help develop their team and identify, which skills each team member needs to develop. And they also are leading by example, which is incredibly powerful. What I have found is that it helps leaders make better decisions about how their team is spending time. It helps leaders make better decisions about hiring down the road as they learn more about the importance of developing and executing a process. And it also is a way to develop skills that, at least in my experience, and I've worked for Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 1000 companies, I've worked for other training companies. I have never seen an intentional program to develop sales leadership that's like what Sandler has to offer. And I wish when I was 26 years old, 27, 28 years old, as a new manager, I had the opportunity to really be trained to be a manager, because it's tough. It's rewarding, but it's hard.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was revolutionary is a word that I used when I started taking Sandler. And the training is super important when it comes to the sales manager, but also to when we talk about the sales environment, the sales team environment.
Yes.
And I'm going to date myself right now. I'm 55 years old. I started professionally selling in 1988. And at that time, it was a little different sales process. The environment was much different. I remember people were still smoking in offices back then. And it was, kind of that, you get out there and you close the deal. It was a hard close and all this other stuff. Today, that environment cannot exist because it just doesn't work. It did, in my opinion, I don't think it really worked that well back then, but it doesn't work today. When it comes to that sales team environment, what environment is really needed today in 2021 going into 2022?
Well, I'm right behind you on that. I started selling in 1993. And when you think about that time frame to today, when I started working, the internet had barely just gotten started, and email was on a blue screen with white letters. Where did the information reside? Back then, people had to rely on sales professionals to get information. They even needed to start making a decision. Today, regardless of industry, the information gathering process starts on the screen right in front of you. So buyers are more educated today. But that also gives a sales professional actually a great opportunity to bring value in that process. To bring value to help the buyers, whether it's an individual buyer or a team, really determine the depth and the scope of their problem, and the resources they're bringing to bear to take care of that problem, including a return on investment, as well as what does that decision-making process look like. And when the sales professional is involved in that entire process, it's a process where the salesperson has equal business stature because they are bringing consultative value as they move forward. And they're also letting prospects know, look, you may not be qualified to work with me, and that's fine. And that's a professional that understands their worth, that knows how to bring on long-term ideal clients, because it's a lot of work to bring on business. And it is not worth it to bring on the wrong type of client that's not going to be happy, that's not going to be a good fit in the long run. And that's where a sales professional can really learn to be a consultative professional that brings value throughout the entire process.
So in a previous episode or segment, we talked about goals and metrics for the sales professional. For the sales manager, what type of goals and metrics should they have?
The biggest challenge, I think, for sales managers is in how they manage their time. So when it comes to how they manage sales meetings and doing that effectively, and I'll tell you, just doing a pipeline review is not effective. The most effective thing to do in sales meetings is for your team to learn from each other. And then one-on-one time. How do you manage that coaching time? And as a rule of thumb, we advise, you definitely want to coach your movable middle, where there's the biggest opportunity for improvement, but don't forget to coach your top performer. Because oftentimes those top performers can perform at a much higher level. And when it comes to coaching, a lot of managers sometimes don't do it because they don't know how. But if you don't know how, learn, find out, because helping your people develop and get better will develop not only performance, but also loyalty and a process that a manager can continue to use as members of their team move on or as they grow their team. And regardless of what level you are in leadership, those coaching skills are going to pay off. So make sure and take the opportunity to learn them, because when I'm talking with business owners or sales leaders and I ask them, hey, how would you detail your coaching approach? How do you handle those one-on-one conversations? 9.5 times out of 10, the answer is, you know what? I don't do it.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, it's the truth. You do hear that too often. So we talked about the company has a culture, and
Yes.
really the sales team needs to have a culture as well.
Yes.
And you want to have a culture that's going to be open environment.
Yes.
To your point, I think you mentioned with any sales professional, you want them participating in the sales meetings and more one-on-ones. You want to really encourage, positive things when it comes to enthusiasm, and also when it comes to passion.
Yes.
Respect and integrity are important as well. What else should be put into a sales team culture above and beyond, or what a company culture would provide?
You want to set an intentional framework where they can learn from each other. If you are selling and you have multiple industries that you sell into, make sure that your team is sharing, what pain points or what problems are you seeing in the different industries, so that you can equip your team to uncover those problems and sell to those solutions. And that's where your salespeople who are in front of clients day in and day out are picking up on what's going on in the marketplace. And if they share that knowledge with each other, everyone can get better together. You also want to foster a culture where they practice together, where you role play together. And if you're comfortable with it, and if it's allowed in the state that you live in, it can be very helpful to record calls. It can be very helpful to record meetings, simply for the purpose of self-coaching and development.
Very good, very good. Kristine, how can people, the viewers, how can they get in contact with you? Social media, website?
Sure. They can find me on LinkedIn. It's Kristine Sizemore with a K. Would love to connect. My website is www.ksainc.sandler.com. And if they'd like to get some more resources from me, they can sign up on my website. And my email is Kristine with a K.Sizemore@sandler.com.
Excellent. I'll make sure that I do put that into the comments so that people can reach out to you and connect with you. Kristine, thank you so much. I really appreciate having you here on this for these three-part segment on hiring a sales team, onboarding a sales team, and also managing the sales team. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Jim.
Have a good evening.
Thanks. You too.